my tenacious art sluts. It's Allison Moon, and you are listening to a brand new episode of the Artgasm podcast. On today's episode, I speak with podcaster and media producer Stephen Penta, aka the Reluctant Sexpert. This was a really fun interview for me to conduct because Stephen and I have been friends since we met when I was a guest on his then girlfriend's podcast, Guys We Fucked. Stephen was the producer for that podcast for many years, and we became friends then, and we've stayed friends since. And as he's worked his way into the sex education industry, I've actually really enjoyed having talks with him about his explorations therein. And so this podcast is actually a lot about work. We talk a lot about just understanding your own validity as an educator, as an artist. And I think that this is a really useful conversation where we are right now as we in the United States are trying to very much figure out our relationship with work. Obviously, right now, we're still very much living under a pandemic that is getting worse and worse because of the failed efforts of, or the lack of efforts by some of the most important people in our society. And it is absolutely infuriating and absolutely exhausting. And if you are infuriated and exhausted, I just want you to know that I see you and I hear you and I understand. I have had a hard time focusing on anything. I've had a hard time maintaining any sort of equilibrium as we've been collectively going through this horrible time, while also collectively going through experiences of intense cultural upheaval. Black Lives Matter protests are still very much happening, and I 100% applaud the efforts of everyone who's out in the streets. I've been out in the streets myself a couple of times, and it has been emboldening and at the same time absolutely it's horrifying to see what's we're up against and to see what we as compassionate, progressive, inclusive, loving people are up against. I find it sometimes incredibly hard to stay engaged, and at the same time we need to stay engaged. And one of the ways we can stay engaged is by feeding our souls, and we feed our souls primarily through the arts. And that's not just exclusive to artists. That is, art is the thing that connects humanity. It is the stories we tell to one another, the music that we listen to, the movies we watch. These things matter. And I actually speak a little bit about that on my Patreon regarding the importance of diversity, not just because it's important for people to learn about other people's opinions and other people's experiences. That's obviously very important, but because it shows us what's possible. And I know that sounds very fundamental and very basic, but I think we need to remember, especially in times like these, what's possible, what's actually part of the reality of the fabric of reality we can create. And I find myself really discouraged by cynicism and discouraged by discouragement, really, by this lack of imagination I see from those in power. It's not, we see this a lot right now around the conversation around defunding the police, is that the pushback we're getting from this movement is, well, that's not possible. Who are you going to call when you're a victim of a violent crime? And who are you going to call when XYZ? And it, to me, betrays this complete uncreative thinking. It betrays this very fear of change, this very fear of imagining what's possible. And I hate that tendency, and I understand where it comes from. It comes from this complacency. It comes from this exhaustion. And part of the shock and awe of our current times is to just run us ragged such that we lose our capability of conceiving of something better. And I fear that, and I fear that taking hold of us, particularly those of us who are fighting for just the ability to survive. And I have no doubt that the denial of basic funding for people who are out of work during the pandemic is part of this. The forcing people to unsafe jobs, all of this is a way to prevent people from imagining what else is out there. I got into a little bit of I'm not going to say flame war, but a little bit of an argument on Nextdoor, everyone's favorite racist social media site of all the racist social media sites, with my neighbors, right? With my community members, where I was suggesting that maybe it would be better, instead of fighting to go back to work, we should fight the government to continue to support us financially as we are all unemployed. That instead of putting our most at-risk minimum wage workers back to work just so that they can scrabble for $12 an hour to feed us fast food, instead, if we asked for the government to please continue to help us stay safely at home, that would have been a better choice. And yet some people had such a lack of imagination in thinking, well, that's just not possible. It is possible. It's possible in all of the countries of the world who've chosen to do that very thing and who are doing a good job of it. But for some reason in the United States, it's impossible, not because we don't have the money, but because we don't have the imagination. And at the levels of the people who actually could affect this change, we don't have the compassion. And so to the degree that you can, if you have the bandwidth to lobby your various government officials to actually care about their citizens and actually help us stay at home and help us take care of ourselves and one another, that's really, I think, where we should be spending our efforts. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Okay, that was a little bit of an unexpected rant. So allow me to introduce to you my guest, Stephen Penta, the reluctance expert. So as I said, Stephen and I have been friends for a number of years. And what I love about this conversation is that as we discuss work, he talks about that reluctance of the reluctant sex educator. And at the same time, I think we have a great conversation about how gender affects the way we access sex information and how we use or disabuse ourselves of stereotypes around gender in order to get to a better understanding of ourselves and sex in general. So I hope that you enjoy this. He's going to drop a couple names early on, and this is because we recorded another half of the podcast a while ago, and unfortunately it was a very far-flung conversation that I had a hard time kind of honing into what I wanted to talk about, and that's my own interviewing problem. But so he mentions Christina, who is his ex-girlfriend, who is one of the co-hosts of Guys We Fucked, which is a podcast about sex and is kind of a comedy sex podcast. And then he also mentions Stoya, who is another ex-partner who he created content with. And that's where I begin the conversation around creating sex-positive content, turning into sex education. And he's going to talk a little bit about that at the very beginning. And we're going to move straight on into a slightly more far-flung conversation. So I just wanted to get clear on that for you because we don't go through his history. But I think what's interesting, and I'm going to put the first half on my Patreon, it is a very long conversation about music and about the music industry, which I think is really interesting for those of you who are industry nerds. So that's interesting. But basically, he started out as a musician, and then he turned into an A&R guy for a large record label, and then started producing videos for those labels, and then turned into like music videos, which is how he met Stoya, who was an ex-partner of his, who's in pornography, and then moved into producing content for other people. That's a very shortened version of a long conversation. But if you're a nerd for kind of career stuff, which I think is really interesting for those of you who are professional artists or want to be professional artists who are listening, it's an interesting exploration, deep dive into somebody's career choices and how they got him to where he is. And I think it's important stuff for those of us to understand who are in the arts, is that very few of our careers start and end in the same place. I did not study sex ed in college. I studied neuroscience and theater, and here I am talking about sexuality on the regular and arts on the regular. And Stephen started as a punk rock musician in rural Pennsylvania and is now producing content for all sorts of amazing performers and being a sex educator himself. So I think that's all really interesting stuff. If you are interested in learning more about that and hearing that episode, that you can do that at Patreon. That's patreon.com/artgasm. I have a whole bunch of quickies there. I do have some more extended episodes. So if you wanted to hear the longer in-depth episodes with some of my prior guests, you can hear them there as well. And then you can hear a lot of my one-off episodes around different topics around art that are interesting to me. And of course, in this time of challenging work situations, you can help support me and help support this podcast, which I do 100% myself, which I produce and edit myself, which you can probably hear if you are a professional producer or editor. And you can also just help me pay for the various costs that go into just having a podcast at all. And I certainly appreciate that. And then you can get a little bit more direct access to me too, which I always appreciate as well. So that's patreon.com/artgasm. And without further ado, allow me to introduce you to Stephen Penta, aka the Reluctant Sexpert. So yeah, what I think I'm interested in is kind of finding how all of this stuff, like I think like also like the doing the videos, working with Stoya, all this stuff kind of beginning in these like kind of proto sex positive work, and then now you have a podcast it's actually about sex education. You do a lot of live
Hmm.
events that are education. So I'm kind of curious like how you arrived at where you are and where you see yourself going. What?
All the things you said just make me want to start bashing myself.
I mean, you made things together. How?
Well, but
What?
I think that's part of my self abuse is that like I don't want to own up to anything I've done. You know, I have a real problem
Mhm,
with that. I'm really I think part of what I've been going through this past year is doing a lot of soul searching, and I'm reflecting on it now, particularly because in addition to all the sex ed stuff, like I'm trying to just find not a complete different direction of work, but like slightly more fulfilling work, you
mhm,
know? And that puts you in this place where it's like, well, yeah, like I work with Jay-Z and but I didn't fucking direct 99 Problems. You know what I mean? Like I
mhm.
directed like the making of, a lesser song. And so it just feels a little bit dishonest to when you're doing those things and you have to be really egocentric and braggadocious to be like, oh, like I had to do with this and this. And it's like, well, yeah,
It
but
seems like
like
such a weird framing mechanism, though. Like the idea of it that you see, like even just acknowledging your credits as some sort of braggadocio, like that's
yeah.
strange.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean,
I
it's
mean, I wonder,
really
like, if your career wasn't
destructive.
involved with a lot of like really famous people, do you think you would feel less? Like, if you're like, oh yeah, I worked with so and so fucking, branding company, would you feel
I
weird
honestly
about
think I'm really, really bad at taking credit, and I'm really
it?
bad at it's so funny because I'm like such a typical, you hear about that in Dom sub dynamics too. It's like I'm so bad at doing for myself what I'm very capable of doing for others.
Mm,
But yeah, it's just when it comes to that thing, I mean, I'm going through this right now, rewriting my resume. Like I really needed to phone a friend and just be like, hey, can you help me with this? Because when I do it, I downplay like everything I've ever done. And
mhm.
that's not the way fucking capitalism works. Like
No.
no one gives you awards for modesty, and the way that social media is developed is getting worse and worse and worse, which is, I mean, that's the one thing. Like when I was really thinking about sex education and I was thinking about my brand, like, well, reluctance is my brand,
Yeah.
like I will never be, when you look at the small handful of men that do this, like I will never be that guy that walks in, rips his shirt off, slops his 12-inch cock on the table and just says like, I'm going to teach you how to come. Like it's just not, you know, do you get intimidated by that with other sex educators where it's like, oh man, like I know how to like, give oral, but like you make me look like a troll.
I don't feel that way, but I have heard feedback, I think mostly from men about men. So, like my partner Reed, right? Like, I've seen in workshops people be like, well, this is all well and good, but like, you're hot.
Right.
And I think
Which
that's
is
a
true
really,
for Reed.
yeah,
Like,
yes, yes, yes. It's true. And like,
I've thought that about Reed myself.
yeah, and I think that's actually like a valid thing where it's like talking about like threesomes or how like, just approaching people at parties or like especially like the flirting and the hitting on people workshops where it's
Hmm.
just like if you're a hot person, it's easier to hit on people, right? And so like
Hmm.
and I have definitely I get that and I think that that's kind of this weird challenge in this realm is that like a lot of people who people like to watch are good looking people. That's just the way that the world works,
You
right?
want
So
to click on a
actors,
good looking person.
yeah,
Like
exactly. So actors,
back the way.
performers, anybody, like it's better if they're hot.
Yeah.
So the people who tend to rise to the top of every field tend to be better looking.
Yeah.
And so in sex education, that just also happens to be a direct one-to-one correlation of being hot, getting laid. So
Hmm.
it seems like I think the stereotype is like that people who are good looking don't need to overcome their inner demons or don't need to learn about things or don't need to be good at sex
Yeah.
in order to get laid, which is kind of true here and there. But at the same time,
Hmm.
like I still think the skill sets translate. So yeah, it is. I do find that to be a thing that happens a lot.
See,
But yeah,
I think it's even so much more complex than that because
yeah,
I actually am thinking of, what that brings up for me is that looking at, for example, like one of the things that I noticed in my relationship with Christina is like Stoya could write a really brilliant New York Times piece or a book and it would reach a small sliver of people.
Mm-hmm.
But if what she was saying got filtered through me and kind of like went through another line of telephone through Christina and then through the lens of comedy and like that Zooey Deschanel archetype, all of a sudden that would resonate in a different way. It's similar to, I mean, like when the Harvey Weinstein story broke, it was like people have been saying these things about Harvey Weinstein for years,
Mm-hmm.
or no, fucking Bill Cosby, not Harvey Weinstein. Sorry, mixing up my terrible male humans.
Yes.
No, but we heard terrible shit about Bill Cosby for years. Hannibal Buress makes it into a perfect bit, and all of a sudden it's like that resonates.
Right.
It's so interesting where it's like we need this. If the smartest person in the room says it, we it almost like goes in one ear and out the other. If Elizabeth Warren says it, we don't hear it. If it comes
Right.
out of someone that we kind of put ourselves on the same pedestal, like on the same level as,
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden it resonates. And I think it's such an interesting time right now because we have a voice catered to everyone.
Yeah. But I mean,
um,
I think we're still trained. Like, I mean, again, like all I hear in that what you just said is misogyny, right? And like
mhm,
sex phobia. So it's like, yes, Stoya because she's a woman, because she's pretty, because she's a porn performer. Like, those are three things that discredit her
mhm,
as an expert.
right.
And so filtered through maleness, continuing to be whiteness, like more, it will create this idea of more reputable, regardless of whether or not that person is just parroting somebody else's ideas.
And I'm gonna fight back against you talk about maleness, but I do think that works in both directions because I do think there are things that sex education is a space where it's very, very specific. But I do think that there are things that we're just never going to hear from a man,
Mm-hmm.
like we're just not like that. They just don't have the right to really be saying, and you need to kind of pick and choose your spots. But, I do think it goes both ways. I'm obviously not defending it because, history and, like that would clearly be, fucked up. But,
Mm-hmm.
but I do, I mean, part of what I'm dealing with is like beyond my rampant insecurity, which is definitely there. There's this feeling of like, well, I don't really have a place to be doing this, and I probably shouldn't be doing it. And just getting over that, and that's why, for me, with the projects I'm doing now, it was so important to reach out to female sex educators that I really trust their opinions, and develop friendships like you and Reed and just educators that I really value their feedback, just to be like, hey, I think these fucked up complex things that aren't as black and white as, oh, we don't listen to this person because of inherent misogyny. We don't listen to you because you're male. We don't, like kind of having those conversations and then realizing that it's just so much more fucking complicated than I think anyone can put a tagline or a meme
Yeah.
on. You know what I mean? Like it's really, really. I mean, these are conversations that we're going to be sorting out for the rest of our lives,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to get to a place of like basic, hopeful, optimistic equality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's almost interesting too, because like I feel like the way that sex education intersects with capitalism in this really strange way. Sex is aspirational, but it's also incredibly like quotidian and mundane. Like the
what
relationship,
do you mean by quotidian?
like daily, like the kind of aspects of just like home life and the kind of the mundanity of the day to day.
Yeah.
So like you are like we can look at porn and be like, yeah, I want to fuck like that guy. But ultimately,
Hmm.
like I just want my wife to love me. I just want my
Right.
wife to feel like sexy in my arms.
Yeah.
And so it's like because of maybe it's because of capitalism. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. But like
No.
it feels like we look to these kind of Olympian gods in order to learn how to talk to your wife, and it feels like a very strange disconnect. Like you know, like my husband's never going to have a six pack and have a 12-inch cock, and that's
Yeah.
ultimately not the point. Like, why am I not looking to other people who are at my level in my community to talk about this stuff? Why are we thinking about it like learn how to like stay hard for 8 hours as opposed
Well,
to like
and
yeah.
that's the strange thing is that, when you talk to women about sex and sexuality, I think most women have had the experience of being with a guy that has some equivalent, whatever their objectified equivalent is, of six-pack abs.
Right.
I feel like for men, they may never get to that. They idealize one feminine type, and then they probably never get there or whatever. They don't get to have those experiences. But women usually do. If they want something, they can probably find someone that fits that mold and get it. And what it creates is, I actually think a lot of straight identifying women have a stereotype of, oh, men with six-pack abs are really lazy lovers, because they've gotten to have the experiences and they know that those men are developing that. I mean, you don't develop those muscles unless it comes from a place of ego, or you're in training to be a superhero, or you do something. I mean, it just doesn't happen for the normal guy, especially someone like me, where it's like, I got a computer job.
Yeah.
And so I think women, I think that's how you see the heartthrob archetype of a Paul Rudd, where it's like, oh, you're just a cool, fun dad,
Yeah. Yeah.
like we, and it's dad bod. Dad bod makes no sense, but it's a fucking thing, it's just this
Right.
thing that people are like,
But it's
yeah.
this indication that like you actually care about other things. Like, yes,
Mhm.
like having a superhero body requires like 6 hours in the gym and no grains of rice for 12 years. Like,
Yep.
it's insane. And like
So much
that's
self-obsession.
yeah, it makes for an unpleasant partner.
Yeah.
And like the person who actually gives it more of a shit about like, maintaining a happy, balanced life is far more sexually appealing to me than
Yeah.
the Chris Hemsworths. Like, and I just find that so strange that I think, well, it's, I mean, again, like not to get too gender normative about it, but like it is strange what you're talking about, like the ideas that men have about what women want versus what women want.
Mhm.
It kind of reminds me of like the classic comic book argument. So, I mean, this is a kind of an older argument now because of comic book movies, but like back in the 90s, comic books were, the females depicted were these like sexual fantasies, right?
Oh,
Giant
insane.
tits,
Yeah.
wasp waists, ultimately
Unattainable.
I
Yeah.
mean, unattainable and also like just
Madness.
completely like beyond physics.
Yeah.
And then the men were these power fantasies. And you would hear these arguments saying, like, well, look at like Wolverine. He's shaped like some sort of hot dude that women want to fuck. And then you actually ask women, and they're like, no, I don't want to fuck a guy whose neck is bigger than his head and who has
Yeah,
veins
Wolverine
bulging
looks
all over.
abusive. Are you
Yes.
kidding?
Yes. When you ask like women what they actually are attracted to, it's like Jareth from Labyrinth. It's fucking Sandman. It's like skinny guys who look like they care about art.
I'm also going to say Jareth from Labyrinth skews very lesbian, Allison.
Listen, I didn't even come up with that example.
I know you pretty well. Jareth from Labyrinth is your type.
I swear to God. Well, Bowie's was my type, but not.
Bowie is everyone's type.
Exactly. But that's the thing. It's like nobody's all excited about. And this is actually, I think, I actually have a whole like thesis that I wanted to write about it. It's a little bit old now, but like the idea of how comic book movies have shaped the like film around the female gaze for the first time, because in comic books, like you could make Wolverine look like a fucking scary wild animal because you could draw anything. But in a live action film, you actually need to cast a real human being. So you have to cast somebody like Hugh Jackman, who's a real man who can make his body extraordinary through a lot of hard work and a lot of people getting paid very well to make him look that way.
Yeah, it's grueling.
But ultimately, he still is within the parameters of a human shape and a human person. And so all of a sudden, now we had that combination of power fantasy and sexual fantasy in the same person. And I think that that's created a whole new idea of what masculinity is. And I think it's going to create a whole new level of complexes for young men for sure.
Oh, I think we're already in it. I mean, the Marvel movies are one thing, but then you also are getting into, I mean, like you look at a movie like 300 and it's like, this is a digital movie. Like we're watching animation. You know what I mean? Like you're one step away from full on Avatar characters. Like it's a ridiculous, fabulous gay fantasy.
Totally.
But you look at that movie and it's like, that stuff. But really, it's like what? Like, oh, poor men, we're gonna have the same complex as women have had forever. Like I don't know. I don't think. I think the reality is like men are still going to be sexually satisfied enough that we're not going to run off and start getting like ab implants or something like that. I don't know, but it definitely is impacting us. I mean, I for sure am an example of a man that it's like I'm very self-aware of the way I look and my appearance and the way I present in the world. Like I I have a lot of complexes, and that's just my insecurity and my need to be wanted.
Well, I mean and I think that ties really nicely back to the sex education thing. It's like the
Hmm.
idea of like there is room for men in this field, and like why do you think like a man who's just looking for just basically improving his sexual skill set wouldn't turn to a man a little bit further down that path than he would more to a woman? Like, what do you think that the
Um,
impediment is?
I think they would anonymously.
Mm,
I just think men are programmed to have a pride that they don't want to talk to other men unless they're really, really feeling desperate, you know? And I think
mhm,
Reed is an example of someone who can speak really well to that, because Reed, you know, when he tells his stories of how a lot of men approach him, it's never like, you know, it's not so much of a Dear Abby. I mean, women are like just hungry for sex education. They're looking for Cosmo. You know what I mean? Like they want to
mhm,
read, they want to consume, like they are into it. Men want to act like they have it all together. And then after a few drinks and kind of the cold of night, they'll reach out and
mhm,
be like, so can I ask you about this, bro?
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
it's much more that kind of thing. And I think where I've seen that for me is just with personal friends and then people who know my story, and putting myself out there is like, this is who I am. These are my experiences. You know, while I'm not the world's expert on anything and everything, you know, I'm certainly not talking about deep kinks and deep psychology stuff. But, you know, if you want to talk to me about your run of the mill vanilla crossover dipping a toe in stuff, like, yeah, I'm kind of that guy, and I put it out there
mhm.
enough, but it only comes in like real desperation, you know. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just where I'm at now. Like maybe that'll improve over time, but I certainly don't see like ferocity for it. I don't know. It's just the men aren't like beating down my door begging me to do this for sure.
Well,
Um,
but yeah, I mean, I totally hear that, and I think that's just so much about like the way that in our culture are taught not to be emotionally vulnerable with one
yep,
another, and it's you can still turn to women more than anyone.
a zillion
Um,
percent.
which is a bummer. But I mean, yeah, but I think what's interesting about like the way that like the sex ed that you present, like it's again, like Reed is a very specific kind of person who talks in a very specific kind of way about very specific things. And like
Hmm.
you, because you're on the monog side of things, you've had a series of different kinds of women you've been with who like certain things. And like you are the kind of average, everyday, normal guy kind of vibe, which I think is
Hmm.
so useful for other men to be able to talk to about like their insecurities and their anxieties. And also like you're so good at the emotional stuff. Like I feel like
Yeah.
you're able to talk about like the feelings of insecurity or the I'm not good enough in this way or my body's not great enough in this way. And I find that to be, I mean, again, like, but I'm through my lens of being a woman, so
Yeah.
I find it refreshing as hell. But I don't know.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. No, I mean, yeah, and a lot of it comes. I do think that a lot of it comes from being a really big fan of comedy,
Mm,
and it's like, look, you know, I do think there's room for a Chris Gethard or a Mark Maron in sex education. You know, I don't claim to
mhm,
have the comedy chops. I haven't certainly haven't put in the time. I'm not going up every night. Like I know how much work that takes,
mhm,
but I do think that, you know, you don't want to hear about a beautiful person bitching about, you know, their trials and you know, their shit. Like you want to
mm,
get down with a friend who's really, you know, in the muck of it. And I think that if you want to talk about depression, you go to your friend who is more depressed than you are. If you want to talk about insecurity, you go to your friend that is more insecure than you are.
mm,
Like if you want to talk about sexuality, you go to your scumbag friend that knows more shit than you. So
mm.
I think that for me, like I don't know what that is. I don't have like a proper humanity calculus on this, but I just know that it's what I'm drawn to do at this point in my life, and I, you know, feels like I got to try. So that's kind of all. That's really the best I have to offer up, and that's that kind of thing where it's like, well, if this is something the world needs, cool. If it's not, they will tell me very quickly. And I just am going into it knowing that I'm not a lot of people's thing, and I'm starting from a place of like, you know, being ready for people to like not accept me doing it.
Yikes! I mean, I get that. I hear that. It's just, it's hard. I mean, but
Yikes! Well, yikes! That was a hard yikes. Sorry, was
well,
that
no,
too?
I'm just
Was
like
that too
that. Just
down?
No, it just it strikes me in where I live. Like it's just
Mm.
I think that like there will always, I mean, again, like in my realm, like there's always in the advice and in the expert field, right? Like I'm not interested in getting all the people who don't like me to like me. I'm interested in the people who already feel resonant with me to like hear me and read
Yeah.
my stuff, right? Like because they're attracted to me already, so hopefully they're already my quote unquote customers. They're already my fans, and like the people who hate me, like they're it's not worth my time.
Right.
Um, and I think that like in this kind of weird granular capitalist machine that we all live in now, where it's just like you find the one person that you like and you give them $10, and
Hmm.
like you have enough people that do that, and then all of a sudden you have a career.
Right.
um
We're
it's
we're all cute little indie bands.
Yeah. we are, we're all cute little indie bands. So okay, so tell me a little bit about the podcast that you're working on now, and why that format, and why that seems to work well for you.
Yeah. So the podcast I'm working on now is our Love with Lola Jean and the Reluctant Sexpert. Is something that came about over, geez, I think we started talking about this sometime last year. And it just became this thing. It actually came from failing at teaching classes
Mm,
because where I started was, I met Lola Jean and I was like, oh, I really love the way you're doing this. I love the way you're teaching. I love the background that you come from. And we just became really good friends and developed a really healthy support system as platonic friends, which also led to having these really fabulous, like, conversation, like logistical conversations about sex that I know that you and I can relate to as well. Um, yeah. So what happened was initially I was like, I don't want to do a podcast because I just came off this other podcast. And if I'm on another sex podcast, all the fans from that podcast are going to come at me and tell me that I'm being hack, which is true. Like that's
mhm,
exactly what fucking happened.
mhm,
But the reason that I came back to podcasting was I tried to develop a class with Lola Jean that was P-spot stimulation for straight identifying men.
mm,
And it's just trying to get straight guys to like be open to sticking things in their holes,
mhm,
and enjoying anal sex and realizing that it has nothing to do with your sexuality. And it's just something that like I feel very passionate about teaching to straight identifying men, and I really wanted to shout about from the rooftops. And
mhm,
so we did it, and it was just like could not. I mean, I could not pay men to come to this class,
right.
and the people that would come out were dealing with such heavier social issues. There were a lot of men going through like really serious divorces, and they just needed the ABCs of like how to be a human much more than what I was trying to offer up.
Mhm.
Although they probably did leave the class masturbating in a very different way, which was satisfying. Um, and so I just kind of went back to like, okay, men are it takes a lot for a man to come to a class.
Mhm,
And I know even, like when I'd gone to see Reed teach, most of the people in his classes were like mixed couples, varied sexuality, but like not a ton of dude. Like,
mhm,
like not,
mhm,
and when you would meet other male, like men that were trying to get into sex education or that were really interested, they're a very specific type that I can usually get along with very well.
mhm.
So,
Sensitive guys.
the sensitive, open-minded guys that like are just wired this way. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I wonder if, like, just about in terms of his career in California, because it's
Mm.
like California guys. It's just a different
No,
vibe,
it
man.
that yeah, that could totally be again a thing. But like at the same time, I'm like, yo, Brooklyn dads. Like, I don't
Mm,
know. I just to me, it could be a New Yorkie thing, but I just think that it's such a larger hump for a man to show up face to face and go to a class. I
yeah.
think it's a big ask, and I just don't think it's certainly something like no one's lining up for this. So I kind of took a step back and I was like, okay, well that didn't, that bricked pretty hard.
Mhm,
Um, but Lola and I kept having these conversations, and it was like, you know what, like. I'm really good at podcasting. I know all the nuts and bolts of it. Like I feel really passionate that these conversations are important, and so let's just do it and see what happens.
mhm.
And so we did. And, exactly what I predicted kind of started off, and there was a lot of pushback. And that's a real, you know, that's a hurdle for me to kind of just like push through. And I also respect it because you know what? Like there is a side eye of a man talking about sex and sexuality. And I think that you need to commit to like just the fact that you're going to have to do this for years before people are going to believe that you're not just some scumbag trying to chase ass. Um,
Wow.
you know, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. And you know what, like doing the episodes is really fulfilling, and we've had amazing conversations. Lola Jean is like just a fantastic networker in exactly the way that I'm not, and we complement each other really well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I've just really come to love doing. And I think it's like most sex ed podcasts where it's like we try our best, and
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to like spread the word, and it's just an organic labor of love.
Yeah.
So
Well, I certainly do appreciate the kind of the second banana role that you play, and not just this podcast, but the other ones in the past too. Is like because I do think like again, like maybe it's that in person it's harder for men to show up, but I think that you being like a normal dude talking to a professional sex worker
yeah,
and being able to have the questions that normal dudes have, and again having a little bit more experience than maybe the average listener at home, but still at the same time you're learning, you're exploring, you're curious. That
yeah,
to me is so much more interesting than a bunch of, again, like a bunch of experts just sitting around talking shop, which is fun too, and I've done that before obviously, but I'd much rather hear somebody who's just a little bit further down the path talking to me about what's worked for them and where they run into problems, because I think it's just so much more human and so much more
totally.
real.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing that having worked in this for so long, is that like the every expert has holes and things that they can learn, and that's the beautiful part of it. Like
Hmm.
we're all kind of on this path, we're all kind of learning, and I think where Lola Jean and I find a really good balance is that I'm really doing and learning, and she's more experienced in certain facets, but then where I think our podcast and the dynamic of our platonic friendship is really unique is that she has this hole in emotional connections and love,
Yeah.
and that shit is my jam. So
And I
you know,
love that because this is the thing that I think is so interesting. Like, I often get hired to teach workshops for university students,
mhm,
and I'll ask them like, "What do your kids need?" Right?
right?
And these kids, they've got the internet, so they've got every technique under the sun. They can Google anything,
Yeah,
and
they've
it's
seen everything.
they've seen everything, but only the stuff that you can actually Google and see in porn.
Right.
The stuff where it's like emotional shit, negotiating open relationships,
Hmm.
having hard conversations about breakups or about like all the really hard stuff is stuff
Yeah.
that sex podcasts don't talk about nearly enough. Sex
Yeah.
workshops don't talk about enough.
For
Even though
sure.
it's all intricately related to sex,
Well,
we're so shitty at educating people about emotional intelligence.
and what I think is so funny is that like where we get our education for that is where I got my education for, which is fucking rom-coms, which is so like not, I mean, the rom-coms are the pornography of the heart. Like
Oh my God.
it's just like it's so
It's so true.
obvious to me,
100%. Yeah.
like, and the more that I've done work, I think that I was actually a sucker of that, like just looking back on reflection of my personal relationships and my codependent relationships, and just trying to keep relationships together. I mean, I would romanticize anything. Like I would try,
Mhm.
and I would accept really intolerable behavior from partners,
Yeah.
because to me, I was this guy that had mainlined way too many John Hughes movies,
Mm.
and you are my lifelong love, and I'm going to make this work through anything. And that's
Yeah.
just not the way the world works. And that's what our parents talked about when they were like, Trust me, kid, relationships are hard," as they're like 15 years deep trying to hold it together with two screaming children, or whatever the fuck that,
Mhm.
like whatever your version of real life is.
Mhm.
Um, and that to me is just it. I don't know. I just think it's such a beautiful human experience at the end of it, even when it's good and it's bad, or it's life, and there's something to it. So
Mhm. Well,
I
I
don't know.
appreciate that too, because I think that so much of the sex advice that we dole out, when you strip it down, it becomes listen to each other, communicate,
Oh, communicate.
figure out your own feelings, discuss
Yeah.
your feelings. And it's maddening because people want the blowjob techniques. People
Right.
want to figure out how to rock her world all night. And it's like, okay, here's how to rock her world. Learn how to talk about your feelings. Learn how
Yeah.
to listen to her when she talks about her feelings. Like, it's so, I'm sorry it's not as sexy
Mhm.
as we want it to be, but that's the real shit.
Yeah. And
And
and those are the advice things that I wind up coming back to all the time. I mean, because
mhm,
sometimes you just need a third party to be like, well, have you listened to them? Are you exploring what they really want?
mhm,
We just did an episode that's very fresh on my mind, about three ways, first time three ways, an entire episode just about first time three ways. That's what I like about this podcast. Like, we pick a very specific topic, and then we're like, you know what? A lot of people ask us about this,
yeah.
so first time three ways, your very first time. And I think what's so interesting, having an elder's experience with that, especially with Lola Jean, where it's like she's been very emotionally disconnected for a lot of those sexual experiences, is that like so many couples go into those the same way I did when we were first going into them, where it's like, I'm not thinking about the third's feelings at all.
Mhm,
Like, I'm just so in my head about how I'm going to keep our relationship together,
yeah.
that we really haven't talked out. Like, well, what are we really looking to explore through this sexual experience? Like, what are we looking out of this to come away with? Is it just a feeling of like, oh, I've done this and you haven't, so we must be
Mhm,
on equal footing, like some bullshit fucking experience barometer? Or
mhm,
like, do you have a sexual desire and fantasy that can only be fulfilled with this unique combination of hands and parts and feels and pheromones?
mhm,
So I just think that being able to have those conversations in a real honest way, I hope that for the young people that find it, that are just watching porn, that are thinking that they're not doing enough or being enough or whatever, I just hope that it seeps in a little bit of like, maybe the stuff you're being fed in that lane isn't all correct, and certainly the
mhm,
stuff you're being fed in like the romantic rom-com lane isn't all correct, but you do find these beautiful moments of truth here and there, and then you find those in your real relationships, and that's what will eventually come to define your romantic life.
mm, mm. I love the
Mm.
sincerity.
Yeah, that's all I
I mean,
got.
but that's the thing, like, I also feel like there's so much of the comedy sex education, sex edutainment is also so cynical
Yeah.
that I can't listen to it because I feel like
Oh.
it's goes for a cheap laugh before it goes for the feelings, and I know that that's comedy, but I'm not interested in that because I
And
feel
I
like yeah. I
Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, it's fine.
I have a real rough time with that right now, because
Mhm.
so much of it becomes, I always joke about it being kind of the Beyonce-ification of boys versus girls,
Yeah.
like if you just, there are beautiful things that you can learn from Beyonce and you can take those, but if you are only listening to Beyonce and you have no Solange, like you're gonna be a fucking egomaniac, because none of that's about community, none of that's about building something together. That's all about me, 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 me. Fuck you, I'm gonna break your car with this bat. Like, and I think that, men certainly do that in the other direction. Men
Mhm.
certainly like, got it. Well, when I was growing up in punk rock, it's like we certainly like, no, don't, you don't put girlfriends before the band. There was a lot
Mhm.
of bullshit surrounding that kind of thought, and there will always be those types of gendered stereotypes. But I do feel like we're making progress, and and
Mhm.
and I do see growth, and it's slow, but where I get really rubbed with the comedy is like that, because I feel like
Mhm.
so much of um edutainment comedy is like, oh, fuck your boyfriend, fuck your
Mhm.
girlfriend, fuck this, it's not about
Mhm.
communication, it's not about understanding, it's not about compassion. It's like someone coming from a very, very cynical perspective who's looking out for themselves, um that's just not giving advice from a compassionate, understanding place. It's like
Mhm.
very, I don't know, you know
Which is why we need people like you, Stephen.
we'll see. In
Ah.
the future, I mean, my wiring will not allow me to accept that compliment, but thank you very much.
I will dom you. I will
Dami,
compliment dom you.
I need to be compliment Dom.
Take it. Take it,
I,
Stephen.
I try so hard.
Well, Stephen, plug your
Do I
shit,
need to do
Stephen.
this? So I am doing Is Our Love as much as we can possibly do it. That's Is Our Love with Lola Jean and the Reluctance Expert. If you can't find it, it's Is Our Love and then an underline and then a question mark because every week our love is something different. Yeah, and then what else? Oh, and then the Reluctance Expert. I'm the Reluctance Expert on Instagram mostly. I guess I'm on Twitter too, but I haven't really activated on Twitter. Twitter freaks me the fuck out, dude.
Why?
Because it's words and talking and fighting, and I just don't really get super into it. I'd rather
That's fair.
I'd rather just make pictures and content and videos, and you can write longer on Instagram. You know, like
Yeah.
I feel like the beauty of Twitter is about the retweets, and that's the part that I'm bad at. So
Yeah, I get that.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah. How are you
it's love.
feeling? Are you okay? Did you artgasm? I don't know. Is there like a trope to end the show?
I do not have to gasm in order
You
for
don't
this to be a.
know.
Listen, you don't have to orgasm in order for it to be a good artistic experience. It's the
Oh, good.
goal-oriented thing is a problem. So yeah, you just gotta. It's all
Great.
about the experience.
Oh, that's fantastic. You're great.
And that is it for this week's episode of the Artgasm Podcast. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Thank you for sharing, for supporting, for subscribing, which you can do on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, and all the places that you listen to podcasts. Do become a subscriber. It does mean a lot. Leave a review wherever you feel compelled to, wherever they allow you to. And of course, please spread the word. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber. It's at patreon.com, patreon.com/artgasm, and you can listen to a bunch of back episodes, you can listen to more in-depth episodes, and you can just support this podcast as we all navigate these challenging times together. Until next time, thanks so much for joining me. Bye-bye.